He was a broke single father avoiding his CEO, until fate matched them on a blind date. Marcus had $11 in his checking account, and a juice box in his jacket pocket that had been there since Tuesday. He knew this because he had checked his bank balance 3 times that morning, the way a person checks a wound they already know is bad, hoping somehow the number will be different. It never was. $11 and a juice box. These were the 2 constants of his life at that particular moment, and he had made a kind of peace with both of them. He was 34 years old. He worked on the 4th floor of Callaway and Briggs Financial Consulting, a company that managed money for people who had so much of it they needed other people to think about it for them. The irony of this was not lost on Marcus. He thought about other people's money all day long, kept it safe, kept it growing, and then went home to a 1-bedroom apartment where the hot water took 4 minutes to arrive, and the radiator made a sound at night like a man coughing in the next room. He was not complaining. That was the important thing. He had decided some time ago that complaining was a luxury he could not afford any more than the other things he could not afford. So he worked. He arrived early. He stayed late when his neighbor could watch Zoe. He kept his head down and his work clean and his presence in the office as small and unremarkable as possible. That last part was strategy. The strategy had a name, though Marcus had never said it out loud. It was called avoiding Diane Holloway, and he had been executing it with the kind of quiet discipline that, had it been applied to literally anything else in his life, might have made him a rich man by now. Diane Holloway was the chief executive officer of Callaway and Briggs. She had been in that role for 3 years. She was 37 years old. She wore gray and navy blue the way other people wore armor, and she had a habit of knowing things about her employees that employees did not realize she knew. Marcus had seen her dismantle a department head in a budget meeting using nothing but 3 very calm questions. He had watched her shake hands with a client and somehow communicate, through the simple mechanics of a handshake, that this company was the safest place in the world for that client's money. She was not a person you wanted paying attention to you if you were trying to stay small. Which was exactly why what had happened 18 months ago still lived in his chest like a small stone. It had been a quarterly review. Marcus had been sitting in the back of the room, as was his custom, in the chair closest to the door, as was also his custom. The review had been running long. Someone's projector slide had a formatting error. There had been the usual shuffling of papers and the usual sounds of people trying to look engaged when they were not engaged. And then Diane Holloway had looked up from her folder and her eyes had found him across the room, and she had said, in a voice that carried without being loud, "Webb, you're the one keeping the Callaway account alive, aren't you?" It was not a question. That was the thing. It was not phrased as a question. He had said yes. He had said it clearly and without stumbling, which he considered a personal victory, given that his entire nervous system had chosen that moment to stage a protest. She had nodded. She had moved on. The review had continued. He had gone home that night and sat on the pull-out couch that he called Zoe's room when she slept over, and he had stared at the ceiling, and he had thought about nothing in particular for a very long time. The following Monday, he had submitted a request to transfer to a different floor. His manager had approved it without asking why. People transferred between floors at Callaway and Briggs all the time. It was a big building. It was a reasonable thing. Nobody thought anything of it. Marcus thought about it every single day. He thought about it while he rerouted his morning walk to avoid the elevator bank she used on Mondays. He thought about it while he took the long way to the 4th-floor kitchen on Tuesday afternoons, because that was when she sometimes came down from the 22nd floor for what his colleagues called walkabouts, meaning the time she moved through the building to see things with her own eyes instead of through reports. He thought about it on Friday mornings when he parked in the east lot instead of the west lot, because the west lot was where she parked, and they would have been walking in at the same time. He thought about it, and he kept doing it, and he told himself it was professional common sense and not anything else, and he was very good at telling himself things. The morning that everything changed began like every other morning. His alarm went off at 5:15. He silenced it before it could wake Zoe, who was sleeping in the actual bedroom in the actual bed because she was 6 years old and that was the correct arrangement. He made coffee. He made 2 sandwiches, one for Zoe's lunchbox and one for himself, because buying lunch was $11 he did not have. He packed the lunchbox with the sandwich and an apple and the last of the apple juice, which went into a juice box that he put in his jacket pocket, because the lunchbox zipper was broken and it would fall out. He got Zoe up. He made her oatmeal. He watched her eat it with the focused intensity of a person who had things to do and places to be and was choosing, deliberately, to be present in this specific moment instead of in the next 17. Her hair was going in 3 directions. She was telling him about a dream she'd had involving a purple horse and a grocery store, and she was telling it with the absolute conviction that this was the most interesting information he would receive all day. She was right. He dropped her at school. He drove to work. He checked his bank balance in the parking lot. $11. He put his phone in his pocket and walked in through the east entrance and took the 4th floor stairs and settled at his desk and opened his computer, and the day began. It was an ordinary day in every way that days could be ordinary. Phone calls, emails, a spreadsheet that had a formula error somewhere in column G that took him the better part of an hour to find. A client who called twice about the same thing because the first answer had not been the answer he wanted. Lunch at his desk, the sandwich he had made at 5:30 in the morning, which was fine. It was a good sandwich. His colleague Nathan stopped by his desk around 2 in the afternoon. Nathan was 28 and had the particular energy of a man who had not yet discovered that life had weight. He talked fast and laughed easily, and Marcus genuinely liked him, which was why he was willing to listen when Nathan sat on the edge of his desk and said, "My girlfriend thinks you need to go on a date." Marcus looked at him. "She has a friend," Nathan said. "Single, smart, very normal before you say anything. She's not setting you up with a disaster. She's setting you up with a person." "I don't have time," Marcus said. "You have Saturday." "Zoe is with me Saturday." "Felicia said she'll watch her. She already offered. She told me to tell you she already offered." Felicia was his neighbor. She was 61 and had raised 4 children, and had the energy of someone who had done the work, and earned the right to decide that other people's children were delightful, because she got to hand them back. She genuinely loved Zoe. Zoe genuinely loved her back with the complete and uncomplicated love that 6-year-olds reserve for the adults who give them snacks and ask them serious questions about their drawings. Marcus looked at his computer screen. "It's one dinner," Nathan said. "You sit. You eat food that someone else cooked. You talk to another adult human being, that's it. What if it's terrible? Then you come home and you have a story." Nathan shrugged. "Right now you have no stories, just spreadsheets." This was accurate. Marcus could not dispute it. "Where?" he said. Nathan grinned like a man who had already won. "A place on Clement Street, good food, nice lighting, not fancy enough to be stressful." Marcus thought about it for 3 more seconds. "Fine," he said. Nathan stood up and pointed at him like a man confirming a transaction. "Saturday, 7, wear the blazer." "I only have one blazer." "Then that's the one to wear." Nathan walked back to his desk. Marcus turned back to column G somewhere in the building above him, 22 floors up. A woman he had been avoiding for 18 months was sitting at a desk with a view she never looked at, and her assistant was writing an address on a small yellow piece of paper. Neither of them knew any of that yet. That was the last ordinary morning of Marcus Webb's life, though he would not understand that until much later, sitting in a car outside his apartment, listening to his neighbor's television through the ceiling, trying to name what had just happened to him. He never did find the formula error in column G. It was in column H the whole time. Nicole Holloway had not always been the kind of person who needed to be told to eat. There had been a version of her, years ago, who had kept a running list in her phone of restaurants she wanted to try, not for work dinners or client lunches, but for herself. Places she had read about in a magazine on an airplane or heard mentioned at a friend's table. Little spots with 12 seats and a handwritten menu that changed every week. She had wanted to try all of them. That list still existed in her phone. She knew because she had scrolled past it by accident 3 months ago while looking for a contact. 47 restaurants. She had been to 2 of them. She had deleted the list 2 days later because looking at it felt like looking at a photograph of someone she used to be. And she did not have time for that kind of feeling on a Wednesday. She was 37 years old. She had been the chief executive officer of Callaway & Briggs for 3 years, the youngest person to hold the role in the company's history, which was a fact that got mentioned in profiles and introductions, and never once in her own head. In her own head, the role was simply a series of decisions, each one carrying consequences she had to understand before she made them. There was no room in that process for the word youngest or the word historic. There was room for the numbers, the strategy, the people, the risk, and the next thing. There was always a next thing. Her apartment on the 14th floor of a building 10 minutes from the office was clean and well organized and almost completely quiet. She had chosen it for those qualities. She had good furniture she had bought all at once, early on, because she had realized that buying furniture piece by piece meant thinking about furniture every few months, and she had better things to think about. She had a kitchen she cooked in on Sundays when she could, and a bedroom she actually slept in, and a second bedroom she used as a home office, and a living room where she sometimes read reports on the couch at 10 o'clock at night with the city lights coming through the window, and a glass of water she would forget to finish. She was not lonely. She said this to her sister B on the phone every few weeks, and she meant it every time she said it, and B listened to her mean it with the patient silence of a woman who had 3 children and a long marriage, and a very specific understanding of what her sister was and was not saying. "You're not lonely," B would say. "You're just full of work." That's not a problem. It is when it's the whole meal. Nicole did not argue with B. Arguing with B was like arguing with weather. You could point out that you were not cold. The weather remained. Her assistant's name was Priya. Priya had worked with her for 2 years. She was 26 and organized to the point of what Nicole privately considered genius, the kind of organizational thinking that did not merely manage information but anticipated it, sorted it before it arrived, built systems that made chaos feel like it had never been possible. Nicole trusted her completely and told her almost nothing about her personal life because there was almost nothing to tell. Priya knew this. Priya had clearly been thinking about this for some time. On the Thursday before the Saturday in question, Priya placed Nicole's afternoon schedule on her desk, and then, without any additional preamble, placed a small yellow square of paper next to it. An address, a time, the word Saturday. "What is this?" Nicole said. It was not a question. It was her voice doing the thing it did when it already knew an answer it did not entirely want. "It's a restaurant," Priya said. "You have a dinner 7 o'clock. "I don't have a dinner Saturday." "You do now." Nicole looked at her. Priya looked back with the calm of a person who had prepared for this conversation. "My friend set it up. He's a good person. That's all I know and all you need to know. It's dinner, 2 hours at most. The restaurant has good bread." "Priya, you haven't taken a personal day in 14 months. You ate lunch at your desk 4 times this week. Last Saturday you were here until 6. She paused. "I scheduled the dinner. You're going." There was a long silence. Nicole looked at the yellow square of paper. She looked at Priya. She thought about pointing out that scheduling her personal life was not part of Priya's job description, and then she thought about the fact that she had no personal life to speak of, and that pointed out something she did not want to examine too closely on a Thursday afternoon. 2 hours, Nicole said. Priya's face did a very small and very professional thing that was almost a smile. 2 hours. She left. Nicole put the yellow square of paper in the front pocket of her planner, which was where she put things she intended to deal with and could not yet bring herself to decide about. She canceled the dinner 3 times in the privacy of her own mind before Saturday arrived. She did not cancel it in any way that actually mattered. On Saturday at 6:15, she stood in her closet and looked at her clothes with the blank, assessing attention she gave to quarterly reports, and selected a blue dress she had bought 2 years ago and never worn because there had been no appropriate occasion, and she thought that perhaps a dinner was an occasion, even if she was not entirely certain. She deserved one. She drove herself. This was important to her. She had been driven in company cars and hired cars for 3 years, and she had missed, without fully recognizing that she missed it, the simple fact of her own hands on a wheel, her own choice of route, her own radio station playing something she actually wanted to hear. She took a longer route than necessary. She did not examine why. She arrived at the restaurant on Clement Street at 6:53. She was 7 minutes early, which was the minimum earliness she was capable of. The host showed her to a corner table. She sat facing the door because she always sat facing the door and had done so for as long as she could remember. She ordered water. She straightened the fork on the left side of her plate, which did not need straightening, and she looked at the candle between the bread basket and the water glass, and she thought about nothing for a moment. It was a small, quiet restaurant, the kind of place that had clearly made a decision to be what it was and was not trying to be anything else. The tables were small and close. The lighting was the kind that made people look the way they look when they are relaxed, which is the best way people look. She had not been anywhere like this in a very long time. She picked up the menu. She actually read it, not the way she read reports, processing information and extracting conclusions, but the actual way, with interest, noting things she might want, considering the options with a kind of attention that had nothing to do with outcomes. She was on the second page when the door opened. She did not look up immediately. She was in the middle of reading a description of a pasta dish that sounded like someone had thought carefully about it. Then there was a small commotion near the entrance. The host said something. Someone stopped walking. She looked up. The man standing just inside the door was wearing a navy blazer and had the expression of a person who had just opened a door expecting a room and found instead a cliff edge. He was staring at her table. Specifically at her. Nicole set the menu down. She knew his face. She knew it in the specific way you know a face that you have logged without meaning to, that your memory has kept without your permission. 4th floor. The quarterly review, 18 months ago. The man in the back chair who had said yes to her question without flinching when everyone else in the room had been busy looking at their folders. Webb, the Callaway account. He was still standing in the doorway. She thought, he is going to turn around and leave. And then she thought something she had not thought in a professional context in a very long time. She thought, please don't. She was not certain where that thought came from. She was not certain it was appropriate. She was certain of it anyway. Marcus Webb looked at his chief executive officer across a candle-lit restaurant on Clement Street, and Nicole Holloway looked back at the man she had thought about, briefly but clearly, every time she passed the 4th floor for a year and a half, and neither of them spoke. The candle between them moved in the air conditioning. And then something happened that Marcus had never seen in 18 months of careful avoidance, and that Nicole had not done in a professional context in longer than she could remember. She laughed. Not the managed, boardroom-appropriate kind. Not the polite kind that people use when they want to communicate warmth without showing it. A real laugh. The kind that bent her forward slightly and came with no warning and was over quickly, but which changed her face completely for the 2 seconds it lasted. Marcus stood at the entrance of the restaurant on Clement Street and watched his chief executive officer laugh, and thought 3 things in very fast succession. The first was that he was going to need to explain this. The second was that he had no explanation. The third, arriving quietly behind the other 2, was that she was the most real-looking person he had seen in a very long time. He walked to the table. He sat down. The host took his blazer briefly to hang it near the door, and Marcus sat across from Diane Holloway with no jacket and an ink stain on his left shirt cuff that he had forgotten about entirely until this moment. "Of all the restaurants," she said. "I didn't know," he said. "I want to be very clear that I did not know." "I know you didn't know." "How do you know that?" "Because if you had known," she said, "you would not have come." She said it without any particular edge, simply as a fact, the way she stated facts. He looked at her, he looked at the candle, he looked at the bread basket. "The bread is supposed to be good," he said. "I haven't tried it yet." "We could try it," he said, "while we figure out what we're doing." She pulled the bread basket toward the center of the table. She broke a piece. She handed him a piece. She did all of this with the clean economy of motion of a person who had decided, in the space of about 4 seconds, to be here. He took the bread. They did not figure out what they were doing, not that night, not in any way that could be named. But they ate the bread, and the candle kept moving in the air conditioning. And outside on Clement Street the city went on being the city, indifferent and alive, the way cities are when extraordinary things are happening inside ordinary buildings. Priya received a text at 9:47 that night. It said the bread was good. She put her phone face down on her coffee table and smiled at her television for a moment. Then she picked up her phone and texted Marcus's neighbor Felicia. "How did your end go?" Felicia texted back a single thumbs up. Priya put her phone down again and felt the specific satisfaction of a person who has done a thing correctly. The restaurant was called Arch, which was printed in small letters on a wooden sign above the door, and it had been on Clement Street for 11 years, which meant it had survived several rounds of the city changing around it by simply refusing to change itself. The walls were exposed brick. The tables were small, round, and covered in white cloth. The lighting came from candles on every table and from small fixtures along the walls that gave off the kind of light that made everything look warmer than it actually was. The menu changed every 6 weeks. The bread came without asking. Marcus had been to Arch once before, 2 years ago, for a colleague's birthday dinner. He remembered the bread. He remembered almost nothing else about the evening, which had been pleasant in the forgettable way that evenings with many people often are. He had not thought about the restaurant since. He thought about it now with the complete focus of a man who had walked through a door into the wrong story and was trying to get his bearings. He was sitting across from Nicole Holloway, his chief executive officer, the woman who had said his name across a quarterly review room 18 months ago, and rearranged something in him that he had spent 1.5 years trying to put back. She had laughed when she saw him. That was still happening somewhere in his nervous system, the fact of that laugh, the realness of it. He had not known her face could do that. In his mind she had existed in a specific register, composed, precise, the kind of still that powerful people learn because stillness reads as authority. He had known her only in that register. The woman sitting across from him right now was composed, yes, still, yes. But there was something underneath it that he had not seen in the quarterly review room or the building corridors, or the 2 occasions he had spotted her in the lobby from a safe distance. Something that was more like a person and less like a role. He ate the bread. He drank the water the server had brought. He tried to decide how to be in this situation, and he concluded after approximately 45 seconds of internal deliberation that there was no strategy available to him. He had run out of strategies. He was just going to have to be himself, which was a sentence that always sounded simple and was never simple. "We could pretend we've just met," Nicole said. She was looking at the menu. "No context, no company, two people at a table." He thought about this. That might be hard. Or we could acknowledge it and move past it. Acknowledge what specifically? She looked up. That we know each other, that it's strange, that we're here anyway. She paused. That we're going to have dinner because the alternative is one of us leaving, and I drove 20 minutes and I already looked at the menu. He almost smiled. "You've been here 7 minutes. I'm a fast reader." He looked at his own menu. The pasta dish on the second page had something in the description about a sauce that had been made slowly, for a long time, which struck him as the kind of detail that mattered. He ordered it when the server came. Nicole ordered the fish. They ordered sparkling water and the server left, and they were alone again with the candle and the bread basket, and the city moving outside the window. "How long have you been at the company?" she said. It came out slightly formal, the reflex of professional conversation. 4 years, he said. "Then, you know how long I've been there?" She considered this. "I do," she said. "I was trying for a normal question." Was it a normal question or a test? The corner of her mouth moved. "Which would you prefer?" "Normal question." Then it was a normal question. She broke another piece of bread. 4 years is a long time to be that invisible. He went very still. "I'm not criticizing," she said quickly. "I mean it as an observation. You are very good at not being noticed. That's not a common skill." "It felt necessary," he said. "Why?" The word landed between them without weight. The way she said things, as if questions were simply requests for information and not provocations. He turned his water glass a quarter turn. He thought about deflecting. He thought about the clean, practiced deflection he used when people asked him things he did not want to answer, the light laugh and the subject change that he had developed over years into something nearly invisible. He did not use it. "Because the last time you noticed me," he said, "it cost me 3 weeks of sleep and a floor transfer." Silence. Nicole looked at him. She was not looking at him the way she looked at things she was assessing. She was looking at him the way a person looks at something unexpected that turns out to be interesting. "The quarterly review," she said. "Yes. I said your name. You said my name like it meant something." Another silence, a different kind. "It did," she said simply, without elaboration. He did not know what to do with that. He put it somewhere he could look at later, when he had more time and less candlelight, and was not sitting directly across from the person who had just said it. The food arrived. This was a mercy. The act of eating gave them both something to do with their hands and their eyes, and the portion of attention that had been building pressure. She ate the way she did everything else, with focus, without waste, and with what appeared to be genuine pleasure. He noticed this because he had expected something more performative, the kind of careful eating that people do when they want to project restraint. She was not doing that. She ate the fish like someone who had been looking forward to fish. They talked about small things at first, the way you do when you are building toward larger things. The neighborhood, the restaurant, whether sparkling water was actually better than still or whether people just ordered it to feel like they had made a decision. He said he thought it was the second thing. She said she thought it was both things simultaneously, which he thought was the most honest answer possible. The couple at the table next to them had a quiet disagreement about something, and then resolved it with the ease of people who had had that argument enough times that it no longer had any danger in it. Marcus watched this for a moment without meaning to, and felt something he could not name, something adjacent to longing, The way you feel when you see a thing you did not know you missed until you saw it. Do you have family here? Nicole asked. My daughter, he said. Zoe, she's 6. He always said it straight, without preamble or apology, because he had learned early that the preamble and the apology were what made people treat it as a problem rather than a fact. It was a fact, a very good fact, in his opinion. Nicole's expression did something. Not the polite, interested face that people made when they were composing their response. Something more like attention. What's she like? Nicole said. Relentless, he said. She is relentless in all directions. She decided last week that she needs to learn how to cook eggs because, and I am quoting directly, you can't survive on cereal forever, Dad. She is 6. Nicole smiled, a real one, slow in coming, clear when it arrived. She sounds like she has strong opinions, Nicole said. She has opinions about everything. She has opinions about which cloud shapes are trying too hard. She told me last month that my parking spot at work lacks personality. He paused. She's not wrong. Nicole was quiet for a moment. She turned her water glass, a gesture that mirrored his from earlier. He noticed this and thought it was probably not intentional, and then thought that maybe it was. I grew up with a single father, she said. He looked up. She was looking at the candle. Not away, the way people look when they are hiding something, but at the candle the way people look when they are choosing words. He was not good at the practical things, she said. We ate a lot of toast. The apartment was usually a project. He forgot school forms the way other people forgot dreams, completely and without guilt. She paused. He was the best person I've ever known. She said the last sentence with a simplicity that made it large. Marcus did not ask any of the follow-up questions that existed. He understood, from the particular way she had offered the information and then stopped, that the information was complete. That was the whole of it. That was what she was choosing to give. He honored it the way she had offered it. He let it be. Zoe is going to be better at the practical things than either of us, he said after a moment. Sounds like it, Nicole said. She's already planning for egg-based survival. She has a backup plan involving pasta. I was told last week that pasta is, quote, basically emergency food. Nicole laughed again. The same real kind as before, the bending forward kind. He thought he could probably hear that laugh 1,000 times and still feel it arrive like something new. The restaurant had filled up around them, without either of them noticing. The noise level had risen, the particular pleasant noise of people eating and talking in a room that was the right size. The server came and cleared their plates and offered dessert, and they both declined in the same half-second, which made them both pause and look at each other. Coffee, the server said. They both said yes. The coffee came. They sat with it the way people sit with coffee at the end of a meal when the meal has been good, and the conversation has been the kind that makes time do unreliable things. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. You can ask. The quarterly review, 18 months ago, you said my name and it was, he stopped. He started again. What were you actually thinking when you said it? She held her coffee cup in both hands. She thought about this with the visible quality of someone who was actually thinking about it, rather than generating an answer. I had read the Callaway account files the night before, she said. All of them. It was a due diligence review. I was going through every major account, and when I got to Callaway I kept seeing the same name in the notes. Every decision, every correction, every late adjustment, same name. She paused. I thought, whoever this is, they care about this account the way most people care about things that belong to them, and I wanted to know who that was. He was quiet. Then in the review you were just sitting there, she said, and I thought that's the person, and I said your name. And then I transferred floors, he said. And then you transferred floors. They were both quiet for a moment. I thought I made you uncomfortable, she said. She said it the same way she said everything, direct and without apology, but he heard something underneath it that was more careful. "You did," he said. "Why?" He thought about this. He thought about the $11 in his account and the juice box in his blazer pocket on Tuesday and the pull-out couch and the formula error in column G that had actually been in column H and all the other small constant facts of his life. And he thought about the way she had looked at him across that room, like he was a real and specific person. "Because I wasn't used to being seen," he said. "Not like that." The candle moved. Neither of them said anything else for a moment. The restaurant noise went on around them, warm and indifferent, and outside on Clement Street the city was doing what cities do, which is continue. "I'm glad the bread was good," Nicole said finally. He looked at her. There was something in her voice that was almost but not quite a joke, the kind of thing people say when they want to land somewhere lighter after going somewhere real. "It was very good," he said. "Worth the 20 minutes, she said. "Did you take a longer route than necessary?" She looked at him. The corner of her mouth moved again. "The GPS has a bug," she said. He nodded, of course. He paid the check before she could, which surprised her, which surprised him because he hadn't planned it. He had $11 and a juice box. He had a credit card that he tried not to use because the interest rate was the kind of number that felt like a punishment. He used it. He thought he would worry about it later, and then he thought he probably would not, which was a new feeling. They walked out of the restaurant together. The air on Clement Street was cool and clear in the way that city air gets at night when the day's activity has settled. They stood on the sidewalk for a moment. "I parked a block east," she said. "I'm 2 blocks west," he said. They were pointing in opposite directions. This seemed appropriate. "Marcus," she said. It was the first time she had used his first name. In the quarterly review she had said Webb. In the restaurant she had said nothing. He had said nothing. They had moved past the formality by not addressing it. He waited. "Tonight was the most honest conversation I've had in a long time," she said. She said it plainly without dressing it. "I wanted you to know that." He thought about what to say. He thought about several things. He said the one that was true. "For me too," he said. She nodded. She turned and walked east. He turned and walked west. He got to his car. He sat in it. He did not start the engine immediately. He sat with the steering wheel in his hands and the quiet street outside the windshield, and the specific, unfamiliar feeling of a person who has just had an evening that cannot be put back where they found it. He started the car. He drove home. He parked outside his apartment building and sat in the car again, the engine off, and listened to his neighbor Felicia's television through the ceiling of her ground floor unit, some documentary with a calm narrator voice. He texted Felicia, "Everything okay with Zoe?" She texted back immediately, "Sleeping since 8, how'd it go?" He typed 3 different responses and deleted all of them. Finally he typed, "I'll tell you tomorrow." Felicia sent back a single exclamation point. He put his phone in his pocket. He got out of the car. He went inside and checked on Zoe, who was asleep with her arm around a stuffed rabbit she had named Captain, for reasons she had explained once at length and that he had followed completely in the moment and could not fully reconstruct afterward. He pulled the blanket up. He stood there for a moment. He went to the living room. He sat on the pull-out couch. He thought about the Callaway account and the formula error and the quarterly review and a blue dress and a laugh that bent a person forward and a sentence she had said so simply it had taken up all the available space. He thought about all of it for a long time. He did not figure out what it meant. He went to sleep. In the morning, Zoe woke him up at 6:23 to tell him that Captain had made a decision about breakfast and the decision was pancakes. And Marcus looked at his daughter's completely serious face and thought that whatever happened next, this was still the whole of it. This was still the thing. The Sunday after the dinner on Clement Street, Marcus stood in the kitchen at 6 in the morning and made pancakes from the box mix he kept in the third cabinet because Zoe had declared, approximately 1 month ago, that homemade pancakes tasted like their feelings and box mix pancakes tasted like pancakes, and this was a distinction she considered important. He made 6, she ate 4. He ate 2 standing up at the counter while she told him about a game she had invented overnight that involved her stuffed animals holding a court of law, which she called a feelings trial, and in which Captain the Rabbit had already been found responsible for several crimes against the Blanket Fort community. He listened to all of it. He listened to all of it the way he always listened to her, with the full part of himself that was not already somewhere else, because she could tell when he was only half there, and she never complained about it, which was precisely why he refused to do it. After breakfast, she went to watch her Saturday morning show, which was about a dog who solved neighborhood problems with what appeared to be a combination of empathy and bread, and Marcus stood at the sink washing the pancake bowl and thought about Nicole Holloway. He had been thinking about Nicole Holloway in a controlled and responsible way since Friday night, which meant he had been limiting himself to the specific things she had said, and the specific way she had said them, and not the larger, more disorderly thoughts that lived behind those, because those thoughts required more courage than a Sunday morning at the sink afforded him. She had said the bread was good. She had laughed the real kind of laugh. She had told him about her father with 3 sentences, and a silence that was exactly the right length. She had said, "Tonight was the most honest conversation I've had in a long time." He turned the faucet off. He dried his hands. He thought about what, if anything, he was supposed to do with a Friday night that could not be categorized in any professional or personal framework he currently possessed. The answer he arrived at was nothing. He would do nothing. He would go to work on Monday, and he would be on the 4th floor, and she would be on the 22nd floor, and that was how it was and how it probably needed to stay, because the distance between those floors was not just 12 stories of elevator travel, but an entire map of circumstances. He was a man with $11 in his account and a daughter who held feelings trials for stuffed animals. She was the chief executive officer of the company that signed his checks. These were facts. He was good at facts. He kept being good at facts until Wednesday, when he was walking to the east stairwell at 8:15 in the morning, and heard footsteps behind him and turned, and Nicole Holloway was 4 feet away, also walking toward the east stairwell, with a coffee cup and a folder and the particular expression of a person who has been up since 5:30 and has made peace with it. She stopped when she saw him. He stopped when he saw her. They were in the 2nd floor corridor, outside the supply room, which smelled of toner and cardboard and was genuinely the least romantic location in the building. "Webb," she said. "Good morning," he said. A pause. "3rd floor conference room is occupied," she said. "I'm taking the stairs to 4. Walking meeting with myself." "I'm going to 4, he said. She tilted her head slightly. "Then we can walk together." They walked to 4. It took approximately 90 seconds. In those 90 seconds they did not say anything significant. She mentioned that the quarterly software update had broken 3 calendar integrations. He said he had noticed the same thing. She said someone was looking into it. He said that was good. At the 4th floor landing, she held the door open with one hand and looked at him for a moment with the expression of a person who is making a small decision. "There's a lunch place 2 blocks south," she said, "on Maple. I go there sometimes on Thursdays when I'm not in back-to-back meetings." He waited. "I'll be there Thursday," she said. "Around 12:30. She went through the door. It closed behind her. He stood in the stairwell for exactly 3 seconds and then walked to his desk and sat down and opened his computer and stared at column G for a moment before remembering that the error had been in column H all along. Thursday, he wore a clean shirt. He went to the lunch place on Maple at 12:25. She was already there at a corner table with a menu she had already read. They ordered. They ate. They talked for 50 minutes about things that had nothing to do with work and things that did, moving between both with the ease of people who had already agreed, wordlessly, that the categories did not have to be separated. She told him that she had started keeping a restaurant list again. She said this offhandedly between the soup and the main, and she did not explain what she meant by again, and he did not ask. He told her that Zoe had staged her feelings trial verdict on Monday night, and that Captain the Rabbit had received a sentence of 2 days in the corner, which Zoe had immediately suspended on grounds of good behavior. Nicole had laughed the real laugh again, right there in the lunch place on Maple, with the soup still on the table and people coming and going through the door. She laughed like a person who had forgotten she could and was glad to be reminded. He thought, I would make 1,000 terrible jokes if that was the outcome. He did not say this, but he thought it clearly enough that it was almost the same thing. They walked back to the building together. At the lobby, she went to the elevator bank for the 22nd floor. He went toward the stairs for the 4th. At the midpoint between the two, she stopped and turned. Marcus, she said. He turned. Saturday, she said. There's a place I read about, small, 20 seats. Menu changes every week. She paused. If you're not already. I'm not, he said. She nodded. He nodded. She went to the elevator. He went to the stairs. On the 4th floor, Nathan was standing near the printer with the look of a man who had been watching the lobby cameras for entertainment. Was that, Nathan started. Yes, Marcus said. Are you? Working on it, Marcus said. Nathan pointed at him again, in the confirming a transaction way. Marcus sat at his desk. He opened his computer. He thought about 20 seats and a menu that changed every week, and a woman who had restarted a list she had stopped keeping, and what it meant to be the kind of person someone added to a list they had given up on. He had been on nobody's list for a long time. He thought about what it felt like to be on one. He thought it felt like walking into a building through a door, and discovering the building had been there the whole time, waiting, with the lights already on. 3 months is not very long. It is not very long if you are waiting for something. It is a different thing entirely if you are living inside it. Marcus and Nicole did not announce anything. There was nothing to announce in the beginning because they were still figuring out the shape of what they were doing. They had lunch on Maple on Thursdays. They went to the small restaurant with 20 seats on a Saturday in October, and she was right. The menu was interesting, and the chef came out at the end of service and talked about where the ingredients were from with the enthusiasm of a man who had found his purpose. They went somewhere else the following Saturday, and the one after that. He picked her up the 3rd time, because she had mentioned that she sometimes got tired of always having a plan, and he had said he could drive, and she had said okay with the ease of a person deciding to try something and meaning it. He pulled up to her building in his 4-year-old car that had a scratch on the rear passenger door from a parking lot. In a moment he preferred not to revisit, and she came out in a coat he had not seen before, dark green, and she got into the car with the complete absence of drama that she brought to everything, and he drove. Zoe met her on a Thursday in November. This had not been planned as a formal introduction. Zoe had been at school, then with Felicia. Then Felicia had dropped her at the office with a snack bag and a drawing she had made of the lobby fountain because she was working through a fountains phase and Marcus had said he would be done by 6. Nicole had been in the lobby at 5:57, coming back from a site meeting. Zoe had looked up from the couch near the security desk where she was waiting with her snack bag and her fountain drawing, and she had said, to the room in general, "That lady's coat is a really good green." Nicole had stopped. She had looked at Zoe. Then she had looked at Marcus, who was coming through the inner door at that precise moment and arrived just in time to watch his daughter make a judgment call about executive outerwear. Nicole crouched down slightly, not the way adults crouch to condescend to children, but the way people do when they want to be on the same level. "Thank you," she said. "I've been thinking the same thing." Zoe considered her for a moment with the direct, evaluating attention of a 6-year-old, who has not yet learned to be indirect. "Are you Dad's boss?" Zoe said. "Zoe," Marcus said. "It's fine," Nicole said, looking up at him briefly. She looked back at Zoe. "I'm his CEO, which is a kind of boss." "He said you're a good boss," Zoe said. Marcus thought, "I have never said that. I have absolutely never said that to my 6-year-old. Zoe looked at him with the expression of a person who has said the true thing and is not sorry about it. "You said she made the company better," Zoe said. "That's basically the same." He could not dispute this. He had said that, in the context of trying to explain what CEOs did, and he had used Diane Holloway as the example because she was the example he knew. He had not anticipated that this information would be deployed in a lobby setting. Nicole stood up. She looked at Marcus with an expression he was still learning to read, but which he was coming to understand meant she found something genuinely and privately funny. "She's very precise," Nicole said. "She gets it from somewhere," Marcus said. He did not specify where. He did not need to. They all rode the elevator down together, Zoe between them, her snack bag in one hand and the fountain drawing in the other, explaining the fountain drawing in some detail. She explained the fountain's history, which was largely invented but internally consistent. She explained the color choices, which had been made deliberately. She explained that she had been considering doing a series on water features generally. Nicole listened to all of this with the full part of herself that was not somewhere else. Marcus watched her listen. He thought, this is a thing you cannot perform. This specific quality of attention, this real interest in what a 6-year-old is saying about a fountain drawing. You either have it or you do not, and it cannot be manufactured. She had it. On the sidewalk outside the building, Zoe turned to Nicole and said, with complete seriousness, "You can come to the feelings trial sometime. We have room for observers." Nicole looked at Marcus. He spread his hands in a gesture that meant, "I genuinely cannot help you here. She operates independently." "I would like that very much," Nicole said back to Zoe. Zoe nodded, with the satisfaction of a decision made. Then she took Marcus's hand and started walking toward the parking lot, and Marcus looked back at Nicole once, and she was standing on the sidewalk in her dark green coat watching them go, and her face was doing the thing it did when something had moved through her that she was not yet ready to put words to. He raised a hand. She raised one back. He turned and walked with his daughter to the parking lot. The following Saturday, she came to the feelings trial. Captain had a new case. The charge was conspiracy to hoard all the good spots on the blanket. Zoe served as judge and prosecutor simultaneously, which she acknowledged was a conflict of interest, but determined was acceptable given that she was the only qualified person available. Nicole sat on the floor of the living room. In the dark green coat she had draped over the couch and her good clothes she had not bothered to change, because there had not been time. And she listened to Zoe's opening argument with the focused attention of a woman who had sat through many boardroom presentations and was finding this one considerably more interesting. Marcus watched from the kitchen doorway. He thought, I have been careful for a long time. Careful with his money, careful with his choices, careful with the parts of himself he let other people see. Careful the way you are careful when you have a small person depending on you and not a lot of margin for error. He thought, this does not feel like carelessness. He thought, this feels like the opposite of that. Like something that had been waiting, patient and certain, on the other side of a very long careful. Zoe delivered her verdict. Captain was acquitted on a technicality involving the definition of conspiracy, and the fact that rabbits, she noted, lacked the cognitive capacity for premeditation. Nicole raised her hand. Zoe looked at her. If the rabbit lacked premeditation, Nicole said, how do you account for the fact that he consistently ends up in the good spots? Zoe stared at her. Then Zoe turned to Marcus in the doorway. She's good, Zoe said. I know, Marcus said. Can she come back? He looked at Nicole, who was sitting cross-legged on his living room floor in clothes she had not changed, watching his daughter with an expression that had nothing managed about it. Yes, he said, she can come back. Nicole looked at him then, not across a quarterly review room, not across a restaurant table on Clement Street, not across the lobby of a building where he worked for her. Just across a living room, just the regular distance between two people who have found their way to the same room. She smiled. He smiled back. Outside the apartment window the city went on. Felicia's television made its familiar sounds through the ceiling. Captain the Rabbit sat in judgment from the corner of the blanket fort, acquitted and unrepentant. Zoe was already preparing the next case. Some things end, some things begin. And some things simply settle into place, quietly and without drama, like a person finally sitting down in a chair they did not know was built for them. Marcus Webb had $11 in his checking account the night he walked into the wrong restaurant on Clement Street. He was the richest man he knew by the time he drove home. He just needed the right unit of measurement. The end.